Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, All About Alex. And if you're new here, welcome. I will hope that you consider subscribing and becoming a member of the All About Alex family. We would love to have you. My channel is more of a lifestyle channel, so I do a lot of family activities. I do cooking, cleaning, organizing, decorating. I also have my own small business where I do that for my clients. And I also try to bring in my family as much as possible. So you'll see my sons, and then you'll also see my grandbabies and my husband and everything. So today's video is very exciting because we all just watched the new Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man No Way Home. And we just wanted to kind of give you guys our thoughts on the movie and also what this film is going to lead to as far as the broader MCU. So I have today with me my second oldest son, DeShan. And then I have my third son, Anthony Jr. And I like to talk about things like this with them because they are both comic book buffs, superhero buffs. They know a lot about all these things. So they really teach me a lot. And I find it so interesting. So I also wanted to share that with my All About Alex family. So starting off, we're going to just talk about our overall thoughts of the movie and if we liked it or not or whatever, what have you. So we'll start with you, Anthony. And what was your overall thoughts of the movie and did you like it or not?
I liked it. So personally, I didn't love the last two MCU Spider-Man movies. I liked the first one all right. It's kind of quaint. There's not a lot of like super high over the top action, and it's kind of a little smaller for the MCU films. But then I felt like it and Far From Home are a little they're a little slow, especially at the beginnings. They take a while to get going, and like there's a little bit less action than in some of the other MCU films. So I've always liked them, but I didn't love them, and I thought this one was probably the best of the three.
DeShan?
Well, I think I like the trilogy in general a little bit more than Anthony, but it isn't my favorite version of Spider-Man. I'm a really big Spider-Man guy. I read a lot of the comic books. I got a ton of them. I grew up with the Sam Raimi movies with Tobey Maguire in them. So I kind of have a predisposed perspective of Spider-Man. It's weighed down with a lot of information that most people don't have.
Yeah.
So with me, whenever I watch movies like this, especially with Spider-Man, I'm always thinking of there's certain boxes that are getting ticked in my head about what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
That's why I think the Andrew Garfield was my least favorite ones because I think it ticked the least amount of the boxes that I went for. But I like the Tom Holland ones. I remember when he first showed up in Civil War, I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
And I had expectations for the character, and they went a completely different direction. But is it necessarily bad? I thought Homecoming was a decent start. You know, I like Vulture as a villain, and I liked how it was kind of smaller. Because Spider-Man's always been smaller scale than the other heroes for the most part. It's kind of a joke almost. Like the Avengers are like never in New York because they're all doing something else, and Spider-Man's kind of just there dealing with whatever's going on in New York. And I like that aspect, but I think one of the main criticisms that I had was that the start was too weird because Spider-Man's beginnings are a lot closer to like the other two Spider-Mans, where he just kind of is a kid that is just out there doing his own thing. And in the MCU, he starts off pretty much already with Tony Stark.
Yeah.
And I think even though that relationship was really cool, and it also happens in the comics, it just happens way later, where he kind of becomes a father figure to Peter and he gives him the Iron Spider-Man suit. But they kind of did it backwards a little bit. And that bothered me a little bit because my main thing is my favorite kinds of Spider-Man movies are the ones like Spider-Man 2. Where he's just struggling, and he doesn't have any help, but he still pushes through it. Because I think that impacted me, especially when I was a kid. Because when I was a kid, I was just like, man, if I was him, I wouldn't be Spider-Man anymore. Yeah. But then you see how his continued actions reward him, because doing the right thing is the reward. Yeah. And not just getting something out of it, you know. And the people, the people in New York see that, and then they start to appreciate him. So those are my kind of Spider-Man stories, and I think this new one comes the closest to that. Where he actually has to make choices that have consequences, and his Aunt May tells him it's like, even if things go wrong, you should still always try to do the right thing, because that's what the phrase means, with great power comes great responsibility. It's that if you have the ability to help somebody, it doesn't matter, you should do it. So I thought it was really good. I thought the movie was a lot of fun. and it had a lot of stuff in it for people that love the movies, people that just like Spider-Man. There's a lot of references in it. It's just like little Easter Easter eggs in it, like there's graffiti on the top of that building that has Steve Ditko, co-creator of Spider-Man's name on it.
Oh.
That was one of the first things I noticed. He's the guy that used to draw the original comic books.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of references in some of the dialogue that the villains have is stuff that they said in the previous film. It's cool how they used it, especially the Green Goblin. I thought the Green Goblin was really good at it. And it was fun seeing Willem Dafoe come back and do it. And it was fun seeing Ed Molina come back and do Dr. Octopus. And Electro was surprisingly good. Everything about it was really good, honestly, except there's a couple of things like at the beginning where I was like, it was kind of choppy, but I think as the movie progressed, I liked it more and more.
Okay.
And then it got to the ending, and I was really into it.
So overall,
it was really good.
okay.
I'd say it's probably my third favorite Spider-Man movie altogether, out of all of the ones that exist.
Okay.
It might be even my second. It just depends. I have to think about it a little more.
Okay. Well, my overall thoughts is I really liked it. I went with my husband, and these guys went by themselves, and then I went with my husband. And he was saying that I kept going up in my seat like this, and whenever it was like an action or something was happening, like really exciting, I was just like, so yeah. And there was a bunch of kids in there, and I thought that was so cute because they were like clapping and they were like talking to the screen and stuff, and I was just like, aw.
Yeah,
There's a guy sitting right next to us that was wearing a Spider-Man costume.
wearing a full Spider-Man costume.
He was dressed up as Spider-Man. He came in, he high-fived some people.
So overall, I really liked it. I didn't have a favorite Spider-Man movie. I think Tobey Maguire was my favorite Spider-Man character so far, before Tom Holland. And I kind of put them both on the same scale now. I think I like them both the same. I love Tom Holland when he was in the Avengers movies, but when he was by himself, I was just kind of like, I don't know. So I don't know if they wanted to use this movie to really reinvigorate the old Spider-Man fans and really try to fix some of the mistakes of the old movies and, you know, bring them back and do things differently. So that's the kind of vibe that I got from it. But I really liked it. But I always say, I'm coming from somebody who does not read the comic books, doesn't know all the backstories. I just take them as they present them, and I thought it was a really exciting and just very adventurous movie. There was a lot of things going on, and it just moved so fast, so you really couldn't tell that it was so long because it moved really fast. Like there were some slow periods, but those were like few and far between, and then it just started moving again. So overall, I really liked it. So what would you say were some things that you would have done differently or you didn't like so much?
Opinions on this?
Well, my first one, it does actually matter. I think that I think you mentioned it a little bit, but like the beginning, I felt like the pacing was kind of, like they were trying to get to like the part where the villains show up. So like all the stuff before he actually talks to Doctor Strange is kind of, it felt like a little choppy.
Yeah.
It's just like scene.
They cut over several months very fast too.
You know,
They cut over several months very quick. There's like a couple of
the whole like backlash of the last movie was like, and it mostly gets over like, especially the legal stuff resolving Mysterio's death very quickly.
Yeah.
It's like 2 scenes and then it's like, well, yeah, that's over.
And they made it seem like from the trailers, they made it seem like it was going to be a huge deal. But pretty much everything they showed in the trailer was all that there was in the movie. That was it.
For me, I thought the middle of the movie was pretty solid. Middle and then most of the end. The only like small gripes I had were some of the characterization seemed different from the original movies. I mean, I feel like most of the villains seem more caricatures of the original. It almost seems like they're playing versions of themselves, but then sometimes I feel like Electro just is a completely different character. And it's not really explained why he's such a different character.
But I was thinking that maybe they were all a little off because it was a different universe.
There was definitely a thing where they were like, we're going to change Electro.
Yeah.
There seemed like very intentional. I think Jamie Foxx probably had some input on that.
And then I think just
probably because of the way he came off in the first one. People didn't really like him in the first movie, so maybe he came with his own ideas about well, he should be like this and he should be like that. Or it could have just been the writer wanted to change him and make him a little bit more hip. I didn't think that, but you know, you're a film major, you're a comic book buff. Me, I just, as a regular viewer, I just attributed all of the differences to them being in a different universe. like Jamie got new powers that he didn't have.
That's true.
So I think that kind of changed him a little bit.
And then my other thing is, throughout the movie, I feel like there's a couple times when they set something up and then don't pay it off.
Okay, what were those?
The first thing, which goes back to like the villain characterization, is when Sandman first shows up and he's like, "Hey, you need a hand," and he like helps him take down Electro. I was like, "Oh man, this is so cool." They remembered Spider-Man 3. Sandman's not a bad guy. I was wondering how they're gonna deal with that. And then immediately he's all like, "Oh, what'd you do with that guy? I'm gonna attack you." And I was like, "Whoa, dude!" He literally was like, "Oh, let me explain it." He's like, "Oh, he's making his hand into a hammer." That seemed kind of forced to me.
Yeah, I thought that was weird too.
You know
I didn't understand. I told you I
You know what
whispered
bothered
to
me?
your dad, and that's why I like going with you guys instead of Dad, because I was like, how did they switch to bad? So like two of them, I know Alfred Molina and the Sandman were both kind of leaning towards the good.
Well, Dr. Octopus, I think it's because he mentions that he was fighting Spider-Man before he disappeared. So I think what had happened is it's kind of like with Loki, into like that Loki from the show is a version that instead of getting captured by the Avengers, he escaped, right? And I think that Dr. Octopus is a version of Doc Ock that disappeared before his fight with Spider-Man was over. So he was still
I don't
bad.
think that's
But
true.
what I'm
Because
saying,
he said he had him in his clutches, and
But
then
no,
He drowned. Well, we know he
acts,
drowned.
but he acts good when they first.
because
when
he says the
first
last thing he
changes
remembers was
him.
fighting Spider-Man.
When he first gets the tech and he realizes that he's not the Spider-Man that he is his enemy, he turns good. Like he's trying to help.
That
And he
inhibitor chick is still intact, or no, it's still broken.
But also, he knows that Spider-Man's Peter Parker, which he learned after he was already kind of defeated.
Yeah, I guess maybe what it is
So
is
I'm
when he
thinking when
drowned,
he-
it
I'm
hurt
thinking-
his mind.
No, I'm thinking that when the tentacles we take over him, they've kind of like blocked off the part of his memory of him
Why
being
did they
good.
retake over
They should have
though?
mentioned
Because
that.
I think he was just kind of fighting it, and then like he got control for that
I was
one
like, did
scene
something happen?
That isn't
for
Like,
long enough for
That
him to
isn't
destroy the
well,
machine.
in Spider-Man 2, it doesn't seem like he was fighting. Like once he willed the control over the tentacles, he was fine. I think him
I don't
drowning
know
is
if he
what
would have
did
been.
it.
I don't
no,
know.
what I'm
if
saying
it-
is
'cause
in
he
the
talks about,
new
like-
movie,
Yeah, that's what I mean.
when he's being good,
He
he's
doesn't-
helping.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's
but I think
not trying to kill Spider-Man, but then something happens, something switches when the Green Goblin.
No, he doesn't become evil again. He just runs away because he gets attacked by Electro.
Oh, I thought he was
Electro shoots him out of a window,
okay.
and then he retreats.
So why did the Sandman become evil again? 'Cause
That's
he
the
was-
thing. I think that we and Anthony also were
Yeah,
talking
he
about
was
this.
the good too.
for me, I feel like with Dr. Octopus, like he mentions that there's like the voices in his head,
But that's
and
from
I
the
don't
first
think
one.
because I don't think like he gained clarity in
No,
that,
he
but I don't
says that
think
again in this new one.
I don't think he would have permanently been able to never been affected by it.
Okay.
It's like if you have
the problem-
schizophrenia, and you have a memory.
he was
But
the
the
first
problem
one
is
to
that there's no pushback
He was
until
the first
Spider-Man
one to
puts
get
that thing on.
cured. Listen, he was the first one to get cured, right?
Yeah.
In the apartment.
Yeah.
That never came back off, did it?
No, but he never did any.
So
bad
he never
stuff
went
after
back
that.
He never did any bad stuff.
Okay, but
after that.
Sandman never got to get his cure, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, but Sandman wasn't.
He was just
bad
he
because
was
of the
good
cure.
because he was good in the last movie
Yeah.
at the end.
Yeah, his
But
problem
then
wasn't his
what I'm
powers.
saying is what made him go bad
I mean,
because he was fighting them in
He
the
says
end.
because he doesn't know this Spider-Man,
Well,
he doesn't
also
trust him. But then
after-
even when the other Spider-Man shows up, he's still
after
trying to kill him.
the Green Goblin speech, he just decides to leave with Electro.
Well, he doesn't leave with like they go,
Yeah,
they go opposite ways.
But they do attack the police together. They create like a giant electrical sandstorm and attack the police and all that stuff. And then they both leave. And I'm assuming I don't know why. I honestly have no idea why the Sandman did.
That was confusing to me.
'Cause-
Like I knew Jamie Foxx, you could just tell that he wasn't all the way sold on
Well,
being good,
Yeah,
and I wasn't.
he
I
wants
was
the powers.
suspicious of the Green Goblin. Jamie Foxx didn't want to go back to being
I
a
also-
nerd because remember at the end he says, "I don't want to. Now I'm a nobody again."
Yeah, which is from the
I
comic
also
books.
think,
He's afraid of being disregarded as nobody.
Lizard also has the weird thing where he's like, oh, he's just staying in the truck, but then he just randomly breaks out and starts attacking
That
Spider-Man. He
sounds
doesn't
like
know what's
why,
happening.
first of
in the
all, why
truck.
would they leave him in the truck?
Yeah.
Why would you just trust him in the truck? That made no sense. And then secondly, why did he? Because he seemed fine too. It's just that
The lizard seemed like he was just still bad the whole time.
Yeah, but I'm like, why do you stay in the truck for hours and then randomly start attacking?
Yeah.
It's like, is this something?
yeah,
Green
there
Goblin
were
is
some
doing?
plot holes that were like, huh? Like
It
I'm
seems
confused.
like I think what the main problem is that since a lot of these villains already had arcs, but you still want them to be bad guys, at least partially.
Yeah.
So the writers were trying to figure out how to get that, and I think it just created a situation where they wanted to have their cake and eat it too with the bad guys.
Yeah.
And
It
because of
just
that,
made no sense.
because of that, the when you
It
start,
seems jarring.
yeah, they do a lot of wonky stuff with the narrative.
And then my biggest critique, I didn't like the last 10 minutes of that movie very much.
What?
I was like, well, first of all, so
I
everybody
loved it.
everybody gets their mind erased, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I'll let you know. Why don't he just stay there and tell them right then, right after it?
Because they're still not gonna. You can tell them that you guys used to be friends, but if they don't remember it,
Yeah, but it doesn't matter when you're gonna tell them.
yeah.
Right.
Well, I think it'd be more jarring if he stood in front of them in a Spider-Man costume,
Especially all
and they don't
the
even know.
other
They don't even know who Peter Parker is anymore, and he's just like, "Hey, my name's Peter Parker, and
I'm
we're
Spider-Man.
best friends, and you're my girlfriend."
I don't think he has to do it like that. I mean,
because
Well,
either
he had
way,
that. I think it just goes back to the quirkiness of
I
Spider-Man.
can see your
Remember
point.
he
Though I
had
don't think
the
it's a bad
speech,
point
and
entirely.
he couldn't even give the speech.
well, because I think it's harder for you to come in later. I think if he had just done it right then, be like, "Hey, you guys don't remember me? My name's Peter Parker," because I think he gets into his head.
Gonna
He
tell
does.
them that they're supposed to.
But I don't know why he would have left, because it's like, okay, well, yeah, we'll forget, but just tell us you're Spider-Man, and I would have just been like, okay, I'll
But
just
why-
So they
stand here
said
and
come
wait.
back and
But
find
wouldn't
me.
they be like, why are you telling us that you're Spider-Man?
Or tell us who you are.
Yeah, why are you like? Because they'd be like, why is Spider-Man revealing his identity to us? That's kind of weird. And he's like, well, it's because we're supposed to know each other, and then they're supposed to what
And
after
just
that?
tell them that they were friends and that you forgot who you were.
That doesn't mean that they're gonna be your friends again just because you told them you're supposed to be friends. You
Yeah,
know,
but-
you know what I mean?
And I saw another thing could have
That's what
happened
I'm saying.
was when he went to go tell her, he could have thought about all the things that he put her through, all the danger that she
But
was
yeah, I
in.
think that's more.
And maybe that's why he backed off and didn't
I mean,
say anything.
I understand why he didn't tell her in the coffee shop. The rules for the mind wipe are
Well, it's
a little
like I
vague.
said,
Your daddy
It's-
had a problem with that too.
it's
In
one
the
more.
theater,
It's
he
one
said
more
something.
day. Like I said, I think they took too much from One More Day, which is in the comic books.
Okay.
Which is another story. Peter Parker's identity gets revealed, and then through magic, it all gets his identity gets erased, but a lot of other stuff gets erased too as a result.
and I
But the
feel
rules of what that means for the continuity
It's
is
vague.
anybody's guess, and they still haven't. That story came out in like 2007, and they still haven't cleared up the details
Clarified.
for it. Yeah.
I mean, it gets weirder in the comics because they just stop using all the rules after a while.
Well, eventually they just hope people forget about it and move on.
And then just in general, I think they try to make him more like the comic book Spider-Man, but I feel like it feels really artificial and forced. It's like he's got to be in the same spot that these other guys were.
I don't think it's that forced.
Well, to
But
me,
I'll wait for my turn.
to me, I think amnesia in general is usually like this is kind
Jumping the
of
shark.
this is kind of like a
Well,
forced
this
thing.
isn't amnesia though. It's completely different. It's a magical whole thing.
It's a
Magical
magic
amnesia.
spell.
It's basically a universal retcon.
It's a magic spell. By
And-
one of the greatest wizards ever.
Like amnesia is like what happened in Spider-Man 3. Like when Harry hits his head and forgets
Yeah,
that he's
but
the Greek goblin.
It's magic amnesia because I don't know. It doesn't feel like what any of the other movies were building up to. It feels like a very out of universe. Like they wanted to change him to be more like the regular Spider-Man, so they wrote the movie around getting him to this point. Not necessarily like this is what things were
So
leading to.
you're saying like they knew what they wanted the end result to be, and then they wrote the movie to
Yeah.
get that result. What do you say? And I'll get to you, DeShan, because I know you have a lot to say. But what do you say about the theories that they did it this way, so if they ever have any conflicts with Disney, they can still have their own Spider-Man without having him be involved in the MCU at all?
Yeah, I think that's possible. I think it'll be weird for his interactions with MCU kids, especially if he's already met them, because he'll be like, "Oh, I don't know." It'll be like, "Hey, Falcon, how you been? It's been a while." And it's like, but it's like, do the Avengers remember working with him? Because
They remember Spider-Man, they don't remember
Yeah.
Peter Parker.
I think that's the
so, well, at that
But
point,
that's where Daddy was confused about, because he was like,
I don't know if that really.
how do you separate? Because they remember us working with Spider-Man,
Yeah.
but they don't remember Peter Parker, and they
I feel like for
Well,
someone
most
like
of the
Doctor
Avengers didn't really
Strange,
know Peter Parker anyway. The Dire Man knew him the best, and he's dead.
I feel like
So
for
I think
someone
it's-
like Doctor Strange, that's not gonna change too much.
Yeah.
Or he's just gonna like, if he still remembers him as Spider-Man, they're gonna have pretty much the same relationship. You might treat Peter like you might not know that he's a kid, but you can tell
And you
by
feel like
his...
it's gonna be the same with all the other ones since they
Yeah,
didn't
they-
really have a personal relationship.
They
with
barely
him.
interacted with Spider-Man. They probably wouldn't have talked to him anyway.
But
I don't.
another reason why I feel like it's kind of forced is I can't imagine that he's never gonna have any of their like friends or loved ones again. I imagine in the fourth one there'll be new people cast, or they'll bring back his old friends.
There can be other characters in the movie without them being his friends, though. In the comics, he went years without having any friends. And even the friends he had, he kept at an arm's length, and they barely knew anything about him. Like in the comics.
Spider-Man, the other ones didn't really have any friends.
I mean,
that's true. Andrew Garfield had no friends.
Yeah.
yeah.
He had Gwen
Maguire,
Stacy,
he
and
had-
she died.
Tobey Maguire just had
He had
MJ.
Harry. He had
Oh,
Harry, and Harry tried to kill him.
Yeah.
Both of them had Harry. And Harry tried to kill both of them.
Harry wasn't in the first one, and then in the second one, they barely talked. And then when he finally, they started to get close, it immediately backfired. So
It seems like
I don't know.
the
I mean,
most
they both
Spider-Man
have
is usually by
a
himself.
wide array of characters that they're trying
Around
to
them.
protect.
Yeah.
Like in the first movies, it's Aunt May,
but the version of protecting
and
them is keeping them at
Mary
arm's length.
Jane, and Harry.
Like Tom Holland, he just had everybody just in.
Yeah,
And
he
the
had
other
like
Spider-Man kept
he had
people.
like a, yeah.
And when they tried to bring them in, it usually backfired in the other movies. Like the characters either died or something, they turned evil or something.
That's why they both kind of talked to him about the dark side,
That's what I think.
because they were telling him basically telling him this is what happens when you have people that you love. You know,
I mean-
they become collateral damage pretty much. So,
Well, my thing is
and they
just
both
like,
went through that.
at least for Tobey Maguire, like Mary Jane knew for the whole third movie.
She did, and the relationship fell apart because of it.
Not necessarily because of that.
Yeah,
Well,
it was the main problem was that he was Spider-Man and that she knew it.
And that she saw.
And Harry knew he was Spider-Man, and he used that
That was
to
not a
ruin their
fan of
relationship even further.
yeah, she's a little bit. I don't know.
What I'm
She
saying
was a
is,
little needy. I feel like this is not what this is about, but the first Mary Jane, which was Kirsten Dunst.
Yeah.
I liked her character for itself, who she was, but I didn't like the way she related to Spider-Man, because it's like you know he's Spider-Man. You know he has to go and help people. He can't help it. That's who he is. And you get mad when you have a need and he can't meet it because he's being Spider-Man. That just drove me crazy. But that's for another day.
sorry, keep interrupting you.
One last thing, because I know I've been talking for a while, but the
You
Venom
gotta get
thing.
your things in. Oh yeah, yeah.
Venom being just an after
That's-
credit scene. It's like why they put the after credit scene of Venom
That's fair.
that he's gonna be in Spider-Man, and then put the after credit scene of Spider-Man that he's not in Spider-Man.
You know what would have been better if the after credit scene in Spider-Man was the first time we saw him in that universe, and
Yeah,
then
I
he
think
disappeared.
And that might have even been what happened. They might have just had an after credit scene in
you're right.
Spider-Man,
Yeah,
and because the after credit scene in Venom, they said was added very late. So I wonder if they just do it in Venom so that they could get some people to go see Venom.
One of the
early.
guys that I watched, one of the commentators,
yeah.
he said that they just wanted to get the symbiote
Yeah.
in the MCU because he left a little piece.
Yeah.
Might have been Marvel Studios.
But I feel
So-
like, you know, they were kind of hinting at Venom and Spider-Man crossing over, and they really just didn't deliver on that.
They do imply in the Venom movie that he's gonna meet him, but then that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Maybe there's an Eddie Brock in the MCU.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
but it's like
the one
he'll be more
commentator
like
said
the
it
Todd
could get on
McFarlane
the Flash or whatever that boy's
Flash
name is.
Gordon. Flash Thompson.
Yeah.
Flash Gordon.
They said.
There's also Matt Gargan. He's in the
Yeah,
MCU.
Matt Gargan.
He could
Matt
Dark
Gargan.
Avengers. Matt Gargan becomes the Spider-Man stand-in. Matt Gargan, he's in Homecoming.
Okay.
And when we rewatch it, I'll point him out to you.
Okay.
In the comic books, he first becomes a villain called the Scorpion
Okay.
because he gets superpowers, and he attacks Spider-Man. But over the years, I was telling you about the Dark Avengers, where they're just the Avengers, but they're
Kind of shady.
yeah. Matt Gargan becomes the Spider-Man stand-in because they take the symbiote and they put it on him,
Okay.
I feel like
and he
My-
just starts acting like Spider-Man, but he's actually secretly really bad.
Okay.
I feel like, you know, it'd be cool to see like other people get the Venom symbiote, but I don't know. I still hoping that Tom Holland and Tom Hardy will cross over. I know that Andy Serkis says that he wants to do it in a movie.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean much.
And he's the
directors.
guy that
Tom Hardy
directed
wants it.
The
last
director
Venom
for
movie.
the last Venom movie. He's directing the next Venom movie too.
Okay.
It could still happen. It might be a multiverse story, but it could still happen.
And your
But I do agree that was kind of a cop-out.
your things that you kind of didn't like about the movie.
Well, my biggest issues with the movie are the thing with the villains' characters. I think they nailed some, and they struggle with others. I think,
Do you think it had something to do with being so many of them? That they
yeah,
kind of like they ran into the Eternals problem?
I think I think initially their main ones that they really cared about were Doc Ock, Goblin, and Electro, and I think they threw in some more just to have more villains in it, and that's fine.
It's
But-
weird that they didn't do the Sinister Six.
Yeah, they could have. There's more villains. They could have thrown in one more, right?
The Sinister
Nobody
Six
would have
is
complained.
like a big. The Sinister Six is the name for like when Spider-Man's villains get together. They typically get together in groups of 6
Okay.
and attack Spider-Man. So it is weird that they went 5.
Could have put one. There's more villains that they could have picked,
It's just like
and they don't pick. Could have had Rhino in
They kind
there.
of hint at more coming,
Yeah,
but he holds them off.
yeah.
I was thinking that one of Tom Holland's villains would show up and be like the last
Yeah,
member of the
like
team.
either the Vulture or
I was thinking it could be like
Or
you were
Mysterio.
saying Mysterio, which I
Yeah.
think would work if it's like all these villains who died fighting Spider-Man.
yeah, that would have been nice.
What were your other things you didn't like?
I think the main problems are earlier in the movie. I think the pacing's a little weird in the first half. I think there's a lot of stuff that happens that's kind of just in there either for the trailers or to build hype. I like that Daredevil was in it, but he's really just there to be there so that they can say he was in
I
the
mean,
movie.
it was a good scene, but it's like
It's a good scene.
It's one of those one things where it's like it's so chopped up that it's like
Yeah.
On its own, it's great, but
It's
when
like,
you put it in the
I
rest of
mean,
the
like
movie,
the
it's
scene
like,
of
this doesn't have to be in the film
Yeah.
when you think about it. But it's in there so that they can say that it's in there, and so that people can speculate about it and be excited. It kind of reminds me of like some of the MCU movies, where like Age of Ultron, where there's a lot of scenes in it that are there because it's the MCU and you need to set other stuff up. Like that scene where Thor just leaves for a few minutes and goes into that water to mess around.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's only it here because the studio needed that scene in the movie.
they needed them to remind people of where all the Infinity Stones are right
Yeah.
now.
We got to set
halfway
Thor
through.
up for Ragnarok or whatever. And so it's like, if that's gonna happen in the expanded universe. And Daredevil and Spider-Man are very closely associated in the comics. So that's the thing people want to see anyway as fans is Daredevil and Spider-Man. And they, Kingpin's a villain to both of them. So it'd be cool to see that at some point. So I think what it is I think Daredevil's in there as a promise of future things more than he is in it for any other reason.
That's what I think too.
It's like, that's fine, but when you look at it just as a movie, it's really weird. And then there's
Do you think that it took the punch out of it by all the leaks?
not for me.
You
I
think it
still
would
like
have
seeing
been
it.
a bit? No, I mean like a bigger reaction though if you
Yeah.
had known like the 3 Spider-Mans were going to be in it, and then the Daredevil, and
I don't know, because
I
it
feel
seemed like people were still excited for it. I think
people are still excited in the theater, but
Yeah.
I think it didn't get the reaction like when all the
Shocked.
Avengers and the people came back and they was like, oh my,
the
and
portals.
everybody was
Yeah.
clapping and screaming. I think if we didn't know, especially when the other Spider-Man showed up, I think it would have been a bigger reaction.
Well, our audience, it was a pretty big reaction when
it was so loud I
Andrew
couldn't even hear the
Garfield
movie.
first.
Yeah, I went to the very first showing, so I'm
That
sure those
guy's-
were the diehard.
And they were like, no way. And then when he showed up, they screamed really
Yeah,
loud.
Andrew Garfield got a bigger standing ovation than
Then Tobey Maguire.
Maguire. I was surprised.
It
But
might
he was
be-
the first one. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then Toby goes like right after.
Because after Andrew Garfield shows up, you're like, well, they can't not do Tobey Maguire.
Yeah.
It'd be crazy.
It'd be weird if he
It'd
didn't
be
show
weird
up.
if he did show up at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not too much specifically that I want to complain about. It's mostly just like, I think the problems I have throughout the movie all stem from 2 things, I think. And it's just the structure of the movie and how I think the writers just had a hard time getting everything they wanted in there.
Yeah.
And you see that, and it's really just them building up to the 3rd act. And everything's in service of that.
I think that's probably the reason the villains are kind of just turned into a little bit of caricatures, is so they can remind you like things about the villains without like going into the depth of it. When they're the only villain in the movie, they can have a little more depth, because we see it happen with like the Avengers. When all the Avengers are around, they're kind of
jokey and hanging
like
out
Iron Man
and
super jokey, and Captain America's like
super serious.
super serious. And it's like, you know, the old movies, Captain America will throw out some jokes, and Iron Man will have a more serious moment. Especially in the first two Avengers, that they all kind of just turn into like the character archetypes.
Which is kind of also what happens in the comic books. I think it's more of a thing where you've got so many characters, you can only do so much with them. And I think Lizard suffered the most from it because he's a much more interesting character, I think, in his own movie than he
think
is.
so? Because I didn't really like him in his movie.
Well,
I just thought it was a dud.
They don't use him very well in this one either because, like, Electro, I think they really redeemed that character. You could have did that with the Lizard too.
Yeah, all they really did was like he was talking about turning everybody into lizards a couple times.
Then he escapes.
He's like, I can fix that for you. And he's like, yeah, let me guess, by turning me into a lizard. That's like.
I like that.
Funny.
Did it scare you when he first popped out of the?
Yes.
I was like,
jumped.
I actually, when I saw that, I was like, this is gonna scare me.
It scared the mess out of me. I was like, what the?
I was annoyed that Sandman was made out of sand the whole time because that's not how it works
in the movie.
And then because I was thinking, oh, it's because they don't have the actor. But then he's at the end of the movie, though. I did see a video where a guy thinks that was reused footage from Spider-Man 3. So maybe the actor wasn't there, even though it is his voice. I looked for the credit.
So they might have just had him come in, because my thinking was that they had him and the Lizard come in, just do
voices and mocap,
like a couple of days, like one day of shooting on set, and then like a day of voiceover.
Yeah.
And then they can do everything, like they can have another do mocap at all.
Yeah.
And then the rest is just CGI. So
yeah,
they don't need to pay for the actors to be there the entire time.
Like the Lizard's one thing, but it's not how Sandman's powers work. He isn't always made out of sand.
Okay.
It did kind of get kind of weird.
Yeah, it started to get a little annoying, especially when he was in the house and he sits on the couch with the sand.
I thought he was always sand in the movie.
Well, he's technically always sand, but sometimes he can make himself look like a person, you know.
But does he have the powers to always do that on his own?
In the other movie he did, he walked around mostly looking like a normal person.
Like he can just walk around and and look like a guy.
Like when Spider-Man first sees him, he just tries to punch him because he doesn't know he's made of sand.
He sees him in the armored truck.
Okay.
And
he goes through him.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, because in the comics it's like that too, where he's always made out of sand, but he doesn't always look like it.
Okay.
And then, because it's technically not actually sand, the comics they explain it's like a weird silicon based, it's also irrelevant, but.
And he's also can control sand though, so
there's technically, I think in the comics there's only one grain in there that's actually him, and the rest of it's just sand he's controlling. And in one comic book, Spider-Man isolates it, it puts it in a little jar, and it's like, oh, and he can't control it anymore, sand. And the rest of it's just saying he controls it and changes to look like himself. But
that's sad.
That's just how it is. I don't know. Sandman, a lot of Spider-Man's villains, there's a common theme of, like, there's like a Frankensteinish aspect where they're like sad scientific accidents and they're just kind of like, oh, this horrible thing happened to you, and that's how they deal with it.
Yeah.
Stanley has a soft spot for like science accidents and monsters made from science accidents. But those are my main issues, I'd say.
I think I talked about mine already. Just some of the plot holes, if you want to call it that I didn't understand. And then, was there anything else I didn't? I really liked the movie. I really did.
I had one other negative.
What?
What was it?
The Doctor Strange fight was definitely
The Doctor Strange
fight. Him fighting Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange. I love that.
I like the fight, but what I'm saying is, if it wasn't a Spider-Man movie, Doctor Strange would not unlock.
He would have kicked his butt, man.
I thought it was neat that he was able to use that, though. I thought that was a neat trick because most people, I think it just showed how his mind thinks. Yeah. And that's why he's a genius, because most people would try to fight their way out of the situation. And he used his strength, which is his mind, to figure out a way to get himself out of that situation. So I thought it was really neat that they put it in there like that. Yeah, and it kind of took Doctor Strange off guard because he wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, I mean, me and DeShan had talked about it, and we was like, well, to make it make sense in the universe, Doctor Strange isn't going all out because he's not trying to hurt Spider-Man.
Not trying to kill him or anything or hurt him.
And he's probably not expecting Spider-Man to be able to do anything.
Yeah, but how did he, like DeShan just said, how was he able to control his body still when he was out of his body?
See, I think he was just going purely off spider sense at that point, because we see you see the little tendrils, which are like how the spider sense looks. And
Oh, I didn't
like,
see that.
when you see Tom Holland's head, there's like little waves around it, which looks
Okay.
exactly like the spider sense does in the comic book.
Tom Holland's head or the Spider-Man?
Tom Holland's.
He had that. Okay, I didn't even pay attention.
Like, I think his
So he
spider
was
sense
still
was
using
moving.
his spider senses to keep the box away from him.
I thought that was funny. It was good.
I thought that he was like, "How are you still doing that?" He was like, "This is awesome," but don't do it again. It was really. I love that.
No, I like the
cool,
fight.
yeah.
No,
It's just that Doctor
don't get me
Strange.
wrong. I felt so that fight and the Doctor Octopus fights were my favorite fights in the
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
Dr. Octopus was crazy. That lady got out that car and she was like, "That was uncalled for." She was mad. We'll talk about things we like. Okay. I like the part that when he goes to Doctor Strange and Doctor Strange, does a spell and everything, but then he was like, just because you went to the college and they wouldn't hear you out or whatever. And he was like, huh?
Oh yeah.
And he was like, you mean to tell me this? I was your first stop? Like, you didn't even think
Wanted to change
to
reality.
go to college and talk to them? I thought that was so funny. He's like, I keep forgetting that you're just a kid. Because it's like, kids make very rash decisions. Like, they feel like the whole world is ending when something goes wrong. And so they go right straight to...
I do feel like him and Doctor Strange should have talked about the spell they were going to do beforehand.
Yeah.
Like, just take 5 minutes and
Dr.
write
Strange,
it out.
yeah, explain to him how this works.
It
So
might
you
just
can
be that
explain
Doctor
to him.
Strange is so used to dealing with people who know about magic,
Yeah.
and he's like, you know how this spell works.
Like he's
And
he's
the
that way
weird-
with Tony Stark. Like Tony Stark in Infinity War will bring up a legitimate point, and Doctor Strange will just be like, no, and he won't explain why.
Yeah.
He's just
So
kind of
he likes kind of being like the person who knows everything
Yeah.
and no one else does.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, we knew that from
Because
the
you
movie.
can tell he doesn't like
Yeah.
it that Wong's the Sorcerer Supreme.
Yeah.
So he's like intentionally doing stuff to
Yeah.
upset him.
Another thing I didn't like was, and this has nothing to do with the movie, but Sony and Marvel and y'all trailers.
Yeah, they
I'm looking at you.
when they want to hide something, they just lie. They don't
Because
even.
for us
try to hide it.
innocent people who don't know anything about the comic books, for y'all to put out trailers that are not at all in the movie is very disconcerting. Because you go into it thinking or waiting for those scenes to pop up and then they never happen. Or a scene will happen that's close to what you thought was going to happen, but then it's different. And you're like, is it just me?
Well, you know,
Or did I?
now whenever they do the trailer breakdowns, they have to be like, well, this could also be edited. You know, you hear that a lot now.
We gotta say
People's
that.
like, well, is this actually in the movie?
Yeah.
Are they cutting something out?
There could be a whole character in here. That
So
ain't
if
the
you're
movie.
watching this video, I mean, we're telling you about the whole movie, so I don't know if you'll be watching it before you see the movie. But if you see the movie and you're watching this video before you see the movie, just know that the things in the trailers are not necessarily what happens in the movies. So that was one thing I didn't like. But
I like the Spider-Man versus Dr. Octopus when he pulled out his tendrils and Dr. Octopus was like,
say, we have
yeah, it's
competition.
like you can tell Dr. Octopus is like, he just ripped me off.
Yeah, it's like, hey,
I thought that fight was really awesome just because it kind of caught Tom Holland off guard. He was like, who is this person, you know?
yeah.
And he had to fight him or whatever. I just thought that was a really neat fight and how they ended it, where he ended up taking over the tentacles or whatever. I thought that was really neat. He's like, how are you doing this?
Yeah.
It was Dr. Octopus's fault for trying to absorb the...
Yeah, and I guess he
Nanites.
didn't expect that he could still control it. Yeah, that was
The other
that
thing
was
I
really.
liked is just his relationship with his best friend and his girlfriend. Like, this is the way you do MJ. I love Zendaya's representation of MJ.
Man,
She's strong. She's not a damsel in distress. She's not always getting into trouble and then he needs to save her.
Yeah.
Even though he does, but he doesn't. She contributes.
I think she strikes a middle ground. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think one of the things that annoys me is like I don't want you to be like always getting kidnapped, but I also don't want you to be getting in Spider-Man's way. And I
Yeah.
think she doesn't do that
She
either.
doesn't do that. She'll say like, no, we need to stay.
Yeah.
But then he'll say, no, I don't. This makes it harder for me if you do stay. And
Yeah.
she listens.
Yeah.
And she don't just show up later and then he got to save
to
her.
be fair, he should have told that time, man.
I don't
Because he tells his friends that they shouldn't go with him because it'll be too dangerous, and then his aunt's just there.
Yeah.
Oh, you wanted to see where his priorities are at.
But yeah, I just love both of those characters. I can't think of their best friend name,
Ned.
but I just loved him and Zendaya. I think they both did an excellent job with their characters. Hopefully they will be in the next ones. I don't know. But everybody that he had around him, you know, Marissa Tomei did an excellent. Oh, at the end when she dies and she doesn't know she's dying, and she keeps saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" Because she feels something's wrong, but she doesn't know it's her. I was in tears at the movie theater. You know, I cry easy. I was just like, "Oh no!" Like, because at first I had heard that she might die, but then when she gets up, I'm like, "Oh, that was another thing that was wrong." You know, she doesn't die, and she's walking, and she goes, "Oh, wait a minute, let me sit down for a minute." And I was like,
They
Oh
cop
my
it
God,
out of the
I guess
desk.
I was like, "Oh no!"
I think they did that on purpose.
And she just, oh, that was just so sad, and how he was just so brokenhearted. That was really touching. So I just thought, from the beginning to the end, I loved all the fight scenes. I loved the banter between the Spider-Mans and how they told each other about their worlds and who they fought and how they handled loss and how they handled being Spider-Man and having that much responsibility and not turning dark and not, you know, using your powers to, you know, try to force things to happen the way you want them to happen and stuff. I just love that. Andrew Garfield, like you said, he was all alone in his movies, so it was like he was so thirsty to have people around him.
It's kind of implied it's kind of implied like after Gwen died, he just hasn't had anybody to talk to.
Yeah,
He's just been alone for years.
because that's like he did. He like
Well, he said he doesn't have time for Peter Parker stuff anymore.
Yeah, so he's just.
So
I think he's just always basically always
just
Spider-Man.
Yeah, and not
He might
go
have
through that again.
Might have like a job or something, like an apartment,
but
like
nobody he cares about.
Yeah, he doesn't do anything besides be Spider-Man, really.
Yeah.
I think that was the best
That was
part.
a nice, yeah, I thought that was great.
So
when he
good.
saves MJ, and then he's like,
your tears.
she's like fine,
He's
and then
like,
he's like,
"Are you okay?" She's like, "Yeah." She goes, "Are you okay?" Because he's just like,
I did it.
I did it. Oh, that was so good. How come Andrew Garfield looked exactly the same and Tobey Maguire looked like he aged 20 years?
Because Andrew Garfield doesn't. He's looked that way for like 10 years. Andrew
He
Garfield.
looked exactly the same.
Like he's for some reason he doesn't age, but
well, Tobey Maguire's is also a good bit older.
Yeah, I mean that was what
15 years ago.
20 years ago.
yeah, yeah. And then I like that Dr. Octopus notices that he's older and mentions it.
And they were joking about him being a youth pastor, just like a youth pastor.
That line when Doc Ock asks Toby how he's doing, and he says he's trying to do better. That's something he said in Spider-Man 2.
Oh, really?
When Doc Ock said that he was brilliant but lazy, he said he's trying to do better.
Okay.
So that's a callback to Spider-Man 2.
There were so many lines
there's a
in
lot
there
of
that
them.
they all said before. I just thought that was so. It was just. I mean, for all the talk about all the things that we felt like the writers could have done differently, I think it was brilliant the way that the things that they did well, they did really well.
But one of the things that I was gonna say is it kind of I was compared it to Days of Future Past. Remember, because the thing that Days of Future Past did for me is it almost even makes me like the X-Men movies that I don't like, because it feels like in the movie Days of Future Past it uses the previous stuff to tell a new story that has a lot of stakes in it, and there's a lot of character development, and it's really cool, like the dynamic between Wolverine and young Professor X and old Professor X, and they use good and bad X-Men stories to tell this great story. And I think the climax of Spider-Man is kind of all about that. It's like, because Andrew Garfield just wasn't my cup of tea at all as a Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But I thought he was great in this.
He was excellent.
And I actually cared that he saved MJ.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, look at that. That was
Because
cool.
you wanted that for him.
Yeah.
Because you could tell that broke him.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, it makes me almost want to go back and you watch the movies with a different context.
Yeah.
It's like even the stuff that you didn't like before, you kind of see it differently.
I mean, I've seen a lot of people talk about how, like, man, I want to see these characters now.
Yeah.
It almost seems like they also, especially Andrew Garfield, but even Tobey Maguire a little bit, like they also grow a little bit at this movie.
And I felt the same way. I'm like, man, now I want to see them and their universes be Spider-Man again. I'm excited to see what, even if it's not another Spider-Man movie, but I think this is really going to boost them as actors.
It's definitely good for Sony's brand.
Because they they knocked it out the park. You know, they didn't steal the light from Tom,
Yeah.
but they did an excellent job with their parts.
Yeah.
I thought.
One of the things about that is like what Tom Holland Spider-Man versus the Green Goblin, and like I'm glad that the way that they handled that, because I was a little worried that Toby was gonna help him beat the Green Goblin, because that's his villain. But Toby just stops him from like going too far, and I like that part.
Oh, I knew Toby wasn't gonna good. He learned from his dark
But
past.
Tom Holland mentioned he actually talked about that fight in like an interview before. He couldn't say too much about it. He said him and Willem Dafoe, they have a fight. That was just like his favorite scene to shoot in the movie, because like Willem Dafoe's like, yeah, he's a really good actor, and he gave 100%, and he was doing like some of his own stunts with the fight scenes. And he's like, even though he's like older, he's still very active and invested in making good movies, and he isn't afraid to have fun with it.
Yeah, they really destroyed that. They destroyed that apartment.
Yeah,
They just slamming each other through everything.
yeah.
They destroyed it.
But that's a Green Goblin. Like, the Green Goblin's probably Spider-Man's worst villain in the comic books. Like, he's crazy, and whenever they go at it, it's always really hardcore and really intense. And I'm glad they captured that in the movies. Like, Green Goblin's like his ultimate bad guy.
Yeah.
So if we never get a Green Goblin in the Tom Holland universe, I'm glad he got the best Green Goblin.
Which is implied because there's no Oscorp.
Yeah, he says there's no Oscorp, but his son doesn't exist.
But also another good part that I loved was when Tobey Maguire did stop him from killing Norman Osborn. He didn't say anything.
Yeah,
There was no words. He just looked at him and he just kept that eye contact, and everything he said everything he needed to say with his eyes.
Yeah.
Like, I understand exactly where you are. I understand exactly how you're feeling. I understand why you want to do what you want to do, but this is not okay. You are better than this. And he didn't say any of those words, but you knew that's what he was saying. He just stood there and held on to it. I was just like,
Yeah, the part where
it was so good.
The movie definitely is trying to like validate all the Spider-Man fans, no matter what kind of Spider-Man fan you are. Like that scene, very deliberate, where Andrew is like, "Oh, you guys are a lot better than me," and then Toby's like,
"No, you're awesome.
You're
say it,
well,
say it.
You're amazing because he's the amazing
Oh
Spider-Man.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
like, you gotta say that you're
You
amazing.
gotta say it. You gotta say it." He's like, "Yo, I'm all
He's
right."
like, no, yeah, I agree. I believe it.
He's like, "Oh, you guys are great." I was
It's
just.
like I never fought any aliens.
It was so good. I just thought, oh my goodness, it was masterfully written.
Yeah, I agree with you that me and DeShan actually talked. We both liked the cast in this movie more than we liked them in the last two.
Yes.
Because, Ned was a little bit annoying. I think in the second one,
Yeah.
he actually kind of hindered Peter. I mean, I liked Mysterio, but I didn't feel like the second movie really had a lot. I don't know.
Mysterio was good because it was for people like you guys knew he was bad, but for people that don't know anything about the comic books, it was a surprise to me
that's why
that
I
he
didn't
was
tell
bad.
Because I wanted you to really.
So I thought his character was really good because he has that lovable face. He could never be a villain, and then boom, he was bad. So I thought there were areas in the movie. It was just.
It's kind of like Ant-Man for me. It's one of those, well, especially Ant-Man and the Wasp. It's one of those MCU movies that they make where it felt like they didn't think it was going to be important, so they didn't really throw anything. Like, there's nothing in that movie till the very end when he gets his secret identity revealed.
Yeah.
It's like, this doesn't change anything.
There's a lot of things. I kind of talked about a lot of the stuff I did like.
We kind of didn't really go in any order.
Yeah, we were all kind of. We were so excited we were all just jumping in. But was there something else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think we covered everything actually.
So,
that I liked.
and we will go in order this time. We'll start with you. Going forward, what do you feel like this means for the broader MCU, and even talking about the mid and after credit scenes?
I think this one's a little more open-ended than some of the other movies direction-wise, but I got some guesses. I know Sony is trying to do something with their Spider-Man stuff. It's just hard to figure out what, because the way they're doing it is very weird.
I don't know if Sony is trying to do anything yet. They're just like throwing stuff on the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah,
because Morbius is coming out. And me and Anthony have been trying to figure out what universe this takes place in. And the trailer makes you believe it takes place in all the universes at the same time.
Okay.
Because there's all kinds of stuff in it.
Yeah, we got references to Venom.
Yeah.
Got references to the MCU.
Yeah.
Because Vulture's in the trailer.
Yeah, I saw that.
But there's like graffiti of like the old spot of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. I got Oscorp in there with the logo from the Andrew Garfield
Amazing.
Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So it's just like everything.
It's like,
So
also,
it's like these are all 4 different universes.
yeah, because that made me and Anthony think that No Way Home was going to end with the Spider-Man versus universes merging together.
Okay.
Because we're like, okay, that's what's going to happen, but that's not what happened. So it's like, and Morbius is the next Sony movie. It's coming out early
Morbius
next
comes
year.
out in 4 weeks.
Yeah, so it's like,
So January?
Yeah, in January.
Okay.
it's like, whoa, I don't know. And then they're making a Kraven the Hunter movie. He's another Spider-Man villain.
Okay.
And it's going to be about Kraven. And Morbius is a Spider-Man villain in the comic books. So they're making movies about certain Spider-Man villains. But who knows what universe Kraven's going to take place in. And, Spider-Man's still getting movies. They actually, Amy Pascal, who runs Sony, announced that Holland's getting another trilogy.
Okay, so
Like
3
it's
more
the
movies.
adult, like now that he's done it with his high school
Yeah, he's
story,
adult.
they're gonna get into his like adult story where he's he's getting jobs and balancing things, and I think that's where they're gonna take, because they did his like Iron Man Spider stuff, Avengers Spider stuff, and I think they're gonna do more like just Spider-Man in New York with like Daredevil, maybe the Punisher. Punisher actually first appeared in a
So more
Spider-Man
down to
comic
earth,
book.
like no
Yeah.
superhero.
Like he probably won't be dealing with Avengers level threats anymore, at least for a while. Maybe
Okay.
eventually he'll go back
We'll
into
wait
that
till
world.
Avengers 5. So what else? I mean, is that it for like the broader future?
He's also known for having a relationship with the Fantastic Four. Him and the Human Torch are like rivals. Like they pretend they hate each other, but they're actually friends.
Okay.
Like they're always pranking each other. Like one Christmas, Human Torch got him bug spray, and he got the Human Torch a fire extinguisher. And so there's a comic where he tried to get a job working for the Fantastic Four. He's like, oh, we could be the Fantastic Five, and they're like, oh no, we can't work with you. The newspaper says that you're a criminal, so and so they just tell him to leave. So I think it'd be cool if they did that.
Yeah.
When they finally introduced the Fantastic Four. I think they're gonna do stuff with Venom. He's getting a 3rd movie.
So who owns the Fantastic Four now? Is Disney back? Are they back with Disney?
It was part of the Fox deal when they bought Fox.
Disney owns everything except for Spider-Man and his side characters, like Venom.
Yeah, Spider-Man and his
Okay,
villains and like his
Morbius.
supporting cast.
Okay.
But like Pascal and Feige still have a very close relationship. They show up a lot together for interviews and stuff, and they're clearly friends. So I don't think the ties are gonna get severed,
Okay.
but I do think Spider-Man's gonna been given more freedom to just be Spider-Man.
Okay.
And I think it's possible. I mean, Anthony, we're talking about the potentiality of Morbius showing up in the MCU, even if he doesn't start there, because it's possible that there's another team of like monster-themed heroes with Ghost Rider and Blade and a couple other people called the Midnight Suns, and Morbius is on that team.
We talk about the Midnight Suns every video we do now.
Yeah, because it's like it seems more and more relevant.
It seems like that's where they're going.
And it's
I
like
just think it's funny.
it'd be cool. And he's a famous member of the team, so it'd be nice to see him. It's clear that Spider-Man's gonna have a big impact on Doctor Strange.
The new movie.
Yeah, and the other Doctor Strange is potentially the one from What If.
It seems very similar because in What If he gets like that very pale
Doesn't he have a cape
complexion.
too?
He does, but does this one have a cape or no?
I don't remember. I thought he didn't have
I
one.
didn't think he had one.
And the toy doesn't come with one. But that's
But the pale complexion and the longer more
mustache,
more
goatee.
messed up, disheveled beard and goatee are both like very similar to the What If version.
Yeah.
And I've been expecting
Some
something from
crossover.
What If because like Kevin Feige said that What If is as important as anything else in the MCU.
Well, he said that all of the TV shows
Have some
are
relevance.
basically on the same level as the movies. So there's things that's going to be in the shows from the movies, and there's things that's going to be in the movies from the shows.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want people to think, oh, I don't have to watch the shows because it's TV. I'll just watch the movies, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's smart. Because I was telling your dad, I was like, well, Anthony told me there was a bad Doctor Strange in What If. I didn't watch any of them. And I was like, maybe I should have watched them.
It was like
I don't know.
he appears in the 8
I didn't
episodes.
watch it.
It's an anthology, but the last 2 were kind of like a story together.
Okay.
But then he appears in 3 of them, so he's probably the most prominent.
Yeah.
Of
And
the
that monster
characters.
tentacle guy with the one eye, right?
Shumagora. He's not in What If, but He's
Okay.
definitely a comic book character.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
I do have. I'm sorry.
it's your turn.
So I do have renewed interest in Doctor Strange 2 because of Homecoming, but also because of some of the information that's been revealed to her. Like, cause Doctor Strange as a comic is really weird. There's a lot of weird stuff in it, and weird characters.
You don't say.
That's one of the things I like about comics is you can just do anything, and when you're an artist too, it just really pushes you. And I think that's why Steve Ditko liked to draw him so much, is because it's just you can do anything in Doctor Strange, and I think a movie that embraces that is good because it'll make them stick out from other Marvel characters.
So what do you think the Wanda parts of the movie that are coming up in Doctor Strange 2? Because at first I was thinking they were gonna be fighting each other, but it looks like not that we can trust the trailers at all, but
Since it's the first trailer, it's
Yeah.
probably more stuff from the beginning of the movie.
okay. Because it looks like from the trailer that they were gonna be working together. What do you think about that?
I think.
Like he goes to her for help.
Yeah, I don't. It could be a Spider-Man situation where the dialogue's been changed, but I do think they're going to end up working together. I'm almost sure about that. And maybe initially starts off more antagonistic, but I think he needs her help for something specific. I don't know what it is. I think there's something she can do that he can't, and he needs her to do it.
Okay.
That's my guess.
My guess
she has
is
chaos
that-
magic.
My guess is that she's gonna be also trying to use him to like get to wherever her
kids.
kids are.
Yeah.
By traveling through the multiverse.
Honestly, I think Scarlet Witch is going to end up being more of a bad guy than a good guy by the end of the movie.
Okay.
But I think they're going to get into a fight.
I'm hoping not. My thoughts is it's gonna be some contention. They may even get into a fight, but at the end, she's gonna be back on the good side.
Scarlet Witch is almost destined to do something bad.
Yeah.
Just because
she's
that's
already
the
done
most,
something bad.
Oh no, it's way worse than that. Like in the comic, I'm just saying, their most famous story of the comics, she messes a lot of stuff up. Yeah, she almost ruins the Avengers forever, and she almost changes. Well, she changes the entire universe.
So you thinking it's probably gonna
Yeah,
be a
In the
multi-story?
comic book, she's basically shunned by mutants because she accidentally got rid of all but like 100 mutants in the world using her powers, and like it's just like, yeah, you just decimated the entire species or whatever.
So you think it'll probably be a multi-movie arc, not just it's not gonna get solved in one
Yeah,
movie
Scarlet Witch isn't
She's
necessarily
already-
evil. It's just that her powers make her crazy.
and uncontrollable.
Her powers drive her insane, and so she can't control herself.
Oh,
So that's what I think they're gonna do in the movies too. Like Doctor Strange tries to help her, but he just doesn't know anything about chaos magic, and he can't do anything about it.
Is he able to read the Darkhold without going bad?
I think it's generally if you use the Darkhold,
Do you go bad?
it like it's
It causes
Drive
you to
you crazy.
go
It's
insane.
that thing where it's like you can have whatever you want, but you have to keep making like compromises every step of the way until you
Like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. when
Eli.
it just
Even though in the comics Eli's just a bad guy.
But even not just Eli, the scientists that created
Ada.
Robot.
Ada, and then eventually, like he kept making allowances, kept going a little bit further and a little bit further and a little bit further because he thought he was really wanting to help people.
Yeah.
Until the point where he was too far gone, and the machine he created was a psychopath. But she thought too that she was doing what was best.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think that's what the Darkhold
the
probably
show
is.
even implies
Yeah.
that even her, even though she was a robot, was corrupted by the Darkhold.
Yeah, because they thought she could read it without
Yeah, they
being
thought she'd
corrupted
be
because she was a
fine.
machine.
If I had any more predictions, I do think Spider-Man, he's probably going to run into Kingpin at some point. If I had to guess, I think Kingpin's going to become pretty prominent in the MCU moving forward, at least on a ground level.
Yeah.
He's just going to be moving
That's
a
what
lot
I
of
think.
parts.
So, what do you think your final scores would be for the movie? We'll go with you, Anthony. Overall.
So for me, overall, I liked the movie more than the other two Spider-Man movies in a lot of ways. I thought the middle was really solid, and most of the ending, the action was all great. I thought the characters were the best that they've been in these movies, and then getting to see the other Spider-Man interact together. I'm not even like the biggest fan of the Spider-Man, but it's like, it's still very cool to see them all come together. But just in general, I still had a couple of things like plot holes and a couple of unexplained things, and the ending didn't work for me necessarily. So I
We
think,
both thought the ending was the best part for us.
yeah, I think I'd give it like a 7.5.
Okay. What about you, DeShan?
Well, I thought the ending was the best part. And it was a messy way getting there, but there's a lot of great stuff sprinkled in there.
Mhm.
And as a solid movie, I still say it's, you know, there's stuff that they probably could have done differently or better. But there's a lot of great moments in it, and it's hard for me to not be into, at least on like a level, because as a big, huge Spider-Man fan,
Yeah, you love Spider-Man.
it's like it's hard to not get into it and not be really into it after watching all these movies over all these years and reading all these comic books. And I'm really excited for what's coming next. I think more than anything, just really go with it with the new direction they're taking it. So yeah, I think it's probably an 8 or a 9.
Okay.
8 or 9 out of 10.
Okay. I think I would give it a 9. I think, like you said, the beginning felt really rushed, even though I liked the beginning too. Once you get past them at the very beginning, I'm swinging all over the place. That was kind of. But then once he got to his apartment where Charlie Cox was there, and I thought it kind of took off from there, you know. And I liked everything after that. I just thought it was hilarious. It was heartwarming. I cried. I laughed. I jumped a couple times. I thought the action scenes were great. Again, I thought that the actors did a great job with their characters. I just thought it was a really all around solidly well done movie. Like, we can all pick out things that we didn't like or we thought they could have done better, but overall, I thought it was a 9, a solid 9. And I want to see it again. I probably won't go to the movies and see it again, but I'll wait and see it.
Will.
I'll wait and see it again when it comes on TV, but I'm glad I saw it, and I think that they did a great job. So I would give it a 9. Any final thoughts?
Still want to see Venom fight Spider-Man.
I want to see MODOK fight Spider-Man.
And I'm excited for Doctor Strange and Thor and all the other movies that are coming up next year. And I would say that Disney had a pretty solid 2021. I think between the TV shows and the couple of movies that we got.
And this movie was Sony.
Well,
Technically.
is it both or no?
Yeah, it's both.
Yeah.
Sony gets like 75%.
I mean, Sony had a good year too. That Venom, even though people hated it, a lot of people hated it, it did very well at the box office.
This weekend it'll probably hit 500 million.
Yeah. So it did very, very well. I think this is going to be, I mean, we were leaving the theater. There was a crowd of people waiting to go in to see it. I know this movie is going to make a whole lot of money.
Yeah, this movie, you know, Venom hits 500 million this weekend, but there's also a good chance that Spider-Man will also hit 500 million this weekend.
Yeah. So, you know, Disney did well with the pandemic and everything. You know, we're not as bad as we were in 2020, and I think a lot of stuff got pulled, but I think in the end it helped them to pull back, to reorganize things, reset, and knock it out the park. Because I don't know if their TV shows would have been as good if we hadn't had the pandemic. I don't know that. I just think us being at home, them having to make the TV shows as good as possible because nobody was going to the movie theaters. I think all those factors made it to where they knocked it out the park with they made little mini movies for TV. And I think they should get awards for these shows. They did an excellent job. So all in all, I feel like they put out quality content. Even Black Widow, like a lot of people didn't like Black Widow. I liked it. I thought it was a good movie. Was it great? No, but it did a good job of telling us her backstory, which I always wanted to know. Why she was like she was, where all of that came from, where all that angst and self-loathing came from, and then also kind of closed up her story before she goes on to die in Endgame. So I thought, even that movie I thought was a good movie. So those were my final thoughts. I thought they did a great job in 2021 with all the projects they put out.
Me and DeShan talking about it. Sony is probably going to be winning the box office this year, but the merchandise is on Disney.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, which is ridiculous.
So,
yes.
Disney's the one who wins in the end.
Yes, because we all know that merch. That's where you make the big bucks.
Decorations, Halloween costumes, toys,
sheets and
extra,
towels and stuffed animals.
T-shirts,
and,
shoes.
Yeah. Yeah, they're definitely going to win the merch wars.
And now they can merge all 3 Spider-Man again.
Oh,
Because you just
yes.
start re-licensing those guys.
Yeah, just release the old toys they already.
Exactly. In that
They already
vault
have these
that
made.
they
Yeah,
have.
they got old molds and they just put them back in the machine.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see Spider-Man 8 movie box set, or maybe even
Yeah.
10 movies thrown the 2 Venom movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. That marketing team, they're busy, hard at work. So thank you guys so much for doing this with me. Thank you for taking me on this journey with you guys. Like I said, I've been watching these superhero movies with my boys since they were able to start watching movies. They've always been into comic book, like when they were little, to get them to start reading. And before they could really read like books, I would get them those little cheap, really thin comic books to read. And they kind of got into that. Also starting to watch the few movies that came out when they were little. They started like really getting into watching the after credit stuff or watching the director's cuts and really getting into, and I was like, like they're not just watching the movies, they're watching all of the stuff about the movies. And so I always try to find things where I can connect with my children on their level, wherever they're interested in. I want to see if I can get interested in it so that we can have something in common that we can discuss and talk about. And we talk about these things all the time. They give me all their theories and all their backstories, and well, this happened in the comic book and that happened in the stories and da-da-da-da. And I just find it very interesting, mainly because it's something that my boys love and I love them. So thank you for watching this video. If you made it to the end, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. And again, if you are not a subscriber, please consider subscribing. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It really helps my channel to grow. And I hope you have a very blessed and wonderful day. Bye.